college football is only 88 days away.
It's so close, man. It's so close.
And for anybody who covers, every college football season, for us, the summer is usually talking season. And head coach Mike Elko's done a lot of that already, spending time with all the coaches' nights, with the boosters and the media. And it's been a lot of the same. It's the preparations they've done in the spring, what they're bringing back, and of course, starting quarterback Marcel Reed, trying to answer as many questions as possible to people, thinking, is he really the guy, right? That's always the question. And I'll be honest, ESPN's FPI rankings came out today. The usual definition of FPI, it's the rating system that ESPN does that it accounts for strengths. So, your offense, your defense, really the roster you're bringing back in terms of the talent, gauging the talent overall, the veteran leadership, all those type of things. But mainly it's a point system. And so I think you guys already know there's not a lot of confidence from the A&M fan base. I would say it's 50-50 right now. A lot of people are just still stuck on the way the 2024 season ended with a 1-4 finish, losses to Texas, and then USC in the bowl game. And, while Marcel Reed is being undervalued and, every quarterback ranking within the conference that comes out, I see him below guys who have either never taken a college snap or have only played minimal SEC games. Guys like Austin Simmons, who is going to start for Ole Miss this season, who is apparently a brilliant student who's already graduated from college already.
He has.
He hasn't played really any meaningful college football yet, and yet I see him ranked above Marcel Reed. College Football Report released their rankings the other day. Reed was ranked 10th below a number of guys who I could easily, Diego Pavia, who's obviously the starting quarterback at Vanderbilt, who's an undersized, as we say, kind of tough, try-hard quarterback. I don't see him being an NFL quarterback, but he's just an exciting player to watch. Why he is ranked above Marcel Reed is confusing to me, but look, these are all opinion-based, and we could be talking about Marcel Reed's strengths and weaknesses all day. But A&M came in at number 8 overall in the FPI rankings, which to a lot is very confusing. Some were mad because they think it's hype and they don't want A&M to be hyped up. And I get the whole karma thing or whatever it is. But look, we've been talking about it on this podcast for a long time. This is as talented as a team as Mike Elko's had going into his second season. He brings back the entirety of his roster outside of Shamar Stewart, Nick Scordon, and Shamar Turner, who departed for the NFL draft for the NFL. And with 14 transfer portal additions, a couple like what he said, pretty much every contributor, even backup, coming back in the secondary, linebacker, with having guys like Torian York and Scooby Williams, who all I've heard all offseason is their NFL projections that Torian York is now one of the highest ranked, maybe the highest ranked linebacker going into the 2026 draft. This is all legitimate praise. And when you have that going for you outside of Marcel Reed, and if he's going to improve as a pocket passer, we also hear about obviously A&M's offensive line, which is returning every starter from before the 2024 season began. Obviously, Mark Naboo, their center, got injured, missed the rest of the year. So there was a cycling through with that position throughout the year. But all these things, when you have a good offensive line and you have and guys who've taken a lot of snaps in the SEC, you have a deep running back room led by Le'Veon Moss, Ruben Owens, Amari Daniels, and E.J. Smith, who I keep forgetting about, and a couple freshmen. And then you finally have what we believe is going to be number one wide receiver in Casey Concepcion. You are due to improve. And that's how I look at it. You are just due to improve unless, things happen, injuries happen, bad starts happen. I get all that. But do you think ESPN was accurate in this ranking with Texas A&M?
So, short answer, no. There's a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to ratings versus rankings, especially with ESPN's FPI. It's based off of just ESPN's ratings for the teams. So, of course, you're going to get a lot of the teams who have accumulated talent over the past 3 or 4 years on this list because, hey, their rosters are just filled up with 3, 4, 5-star prospects that are continuing to grow. And ESPN already has them very, very high on potential NFL mock drafts in this next season. So you're going to see teams like Texas, who I still think they should probably be ranked and or rated number one. Them and Penn State. I think Penn State should be 1 or 2, depending on how you see it. So those could be interchangeable. But all of this to say is that being rated 8th is not necessarily a bad thing, even though A&M fans may want to see it as a bad thing. And, oh, no, we're a single-digit ranked team. No, it's not a ranking. It is a rating. It's just taking all the accumulated talent that Mike Elko and all the returners have had. Like Casey Concepcion is coming from NC State over here, and he's been a model of consistency over there in an offense that has just shined with him as the primary receiver of the pass. Just give him a 5-yard quick in, and he can take it 65 yards. That's the kind of stuff that ESPN's looking at, where you have these 14 transfers, as you said, who are trying to come in and make a positive difference in a first-year A&M team that you saw this past year, where it was lackluster the last 4 games of the season, to be honest. And I don't know how you view it on some of these teams on here as well, because I don't necessarily just want to talk about A&M's rating on here, but kind of where we could kind of position them to see, hey, if they are instead of rated ranked in this, where would we kind of see them as a team starting off, especially going into those first 2 games against UTSA and Utah State, going into the Notre Dame game? Because I think once you go through those first 2 games and then you have to go to South Bend, Indiana, where are you projecting to see them rated by that time? So that's kind of how I look at it. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on kind of how ESPN versus maybe the general fans, like ratings versus rankings of the teams? Because I know a lot of people got engaged off of this. It's a great way to get people hyped for the season, and I know it caught a lot of people's attention. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. If I was saying ranking, it's the same thing. It is a rating system, and that's the biggest differential there, is that when you have a ranking system, the AP Top 25, for example, is the preseason one. I think is pointless. I think it really is I think it's the same as FPI. You're just taking in what the rosters have, what you believe, and it mainly goes from the quarterback to what we just said: offensive line, running back, stars at wide receiver, and on defense, if you have a pass rush and you have a decent enough secondary that's not going to allow big plays. All those things for A&M, they all have that. The biggest outlier is Marcel Reed. So you just have to, I think it's a good way. I think the FPI, I actually really enjoy the FPI. I think it's a good way to get fans to look at maybe if they're still in that zone of, well, I just don't believe him yet. I want to see it. Okay, fine. You want to see it. But I saw a lot of people, it was after the spring game where, you and I both thought, you were actually there. I couldn't make it that weekend, but we saw that Marcel Reed had no time to pass because they just didn't have their O-line, a lot of their starting guys playing. They had a lot of young guys. And the defensive line, which we all had, we kind of worried about because of the losses to the NFL draft, well, those guys shined. And Tyler Onienum and a couple other additions looked like the strengths. And then we looked at, obviously, the wide receiver room, and we said, well, how changed are they going to look? Is this finally going to show improvement? Well, outside of Casey Concepcion showing that rack ability and just those soft hands and ability to get open, yes, Mario Craver did his thing too with the deep pass, running precise routes, making great catches. But guys like Isaiah Williams and Ashton Bethel-Roman, who you and I are both big fans of, those are just now depth pieces. Those are guys who you can rely on. You know that now. You know that they're, very competitive, especially Isaiah Williams, which is great for your team. Knowing that you have now actual elite athletes at the position instead of just filling the void with guys who are productive at the smaller level, bringing them in just to put a Band-Aid over it like they did last season. That's the biggest change, and that's why they have this ranking. Because some people believe in Marcel Reed. I am one of those people. If he ended up playing like crap and not living up to it, I will completely own up to it. I always do with these guys. I used to be a big fan of Kellen Mond and get a lot of crap for that. Now, Kellen Mond is being praised all the time because not that he's playing very well in the UFL, but it's because of his consistency running the offense, and A&M just hasn't had that since Mond was under center because they've had injuries and a lot of issues. But I see Marcel Reed working on the offseason all the time. So I think maybe these type of videos and stuff, his dad, Rodri, does a great job showing all the training he's doing, showing the increased zip on his balls. The dude can throw. I mean, I'm not just saying, I mean, that ball looks like NFL type throws sometimes. We'll see if he can put it all together. But I think these analytics guys, especially guys like Bill Connolly, do a good job of kind of looking at how the offseason is moving with some of these players. You mentioned Penn State, right? Always stacked at area. I mean, always have a star pass rusher that's going to be like a top 5 or top 10 pick. Always have a pretty good offensive line because they recruit really well. Linebackers are always great. The secondary, they always recruit these cornerbacks who end up developing into first or second day NFL draft picks. They're always going to be solid. Quarterback Drew Aller is always the question. Now, he showed improvement, and that's where they're basing this off of, right? Because if you compare Penn State to Texas, what Texas did this offseason was, yes, you have Arch Manning. We all think Arch Manning is going to be great. We all think that Arch Manning is going to be a Heisman contender. They have a young wide receiver core, but they also have some guys that we think are going to step up and fill that void, and they have a ton of talent at the position either way, so somebody's going to step up. What they did was they lost 2 bookend starters on their offensive line. There's still question marks there, but I think they'll probably shore it up enough. Obviously, I think the difference is that Arch Manning, he can make plays out of structure. He's more mobile than Quinn Ewers was. But they were lacking juice on the defensive line. A lot of these guys, Victor Broughton was one of them. They're all graduated, went to the NFL. They went out and landed every defensive tackle you think of in the portal. They are stacked to that position. A lot of guys that A&M was targeting. So when the FPI looks at that, they go, well, we have questions here. We know the quarterback's a star, and we believe that their running back room is great. We think that the tight end room is going to be okay. We think that their Anthony Hill linebacker and Colin Sims a pass rusher, ooh, baby, those are the 2 best guys at their position. Those are future first-round picks. We have some questions here, but overall, great team. Going to be fine. I see that's easy to me, right? And it should be with A&M, because if Marcel Reed is your only question mark, and he's putting all this work into the offseason, because, if he was doing nothing and just coasting off of, no, I'll improve. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You don't have to see it, but I'm improving. He's going to the weight room. They're posting videos of him doing workouts, lifting. I was saying this on the podcast a couple weeks ago with Robert Barons and Will Stone. I'm an avid weightlifter. I'm all about PRs and kind of comparing these athletes and stuff. I played football back in the day, so I know, what's impressive with certain positions and lifting. And he's lifting impressive weight. He's getting stronger. His lower body is stronger. Yeah, he's got this skinny build, but he's got to get a build that's able to take hits more. And he knows that he's going to take hits because he's going to keep running the ball. But I'm just going to say it again. If you have improvement at wide receiver, and especially guys like Amari Niblack at tight end, who, as we know, was an excellent receiver and one of the worst guys to cover in the scene because he was just faster than linebacker or bigger corner that had to follow him during his Alabama career before he transferred to Texas. He's a perfect fit for what Colin Klein wants to do. So you are giving Marcel Reed all of these weapons, all of them. He didn't have really anything last season. No offense to Noah Thomas, who's now with Georgia. But outside of him, there wasn't a lot of juice. There wasn't a lot. Terry Bussey, as we keep forgetting, is the saddest thing. Terry Bussey going into year 2. Now he's an official wide receiver. You don't think he's going to improve? This is one of the highest ranked athletes in the 2025 class, or 2024 class, that, we didn't know if he was going to be a full-time wide receiver or a full-time cornerback. Mike Elko made that clear. You've got too much talent now. So you can't. Yeah, exactly.
I've said it. I said on the first show, this is Terry Bussey's first actual offseason with the
Yes.
program as a full-time wide receiver. You don't think that not only just a few short months in the weight room and the right diet, that he making that transition to full-time wide receiver, he's not going to be able to kind of get in motion and just get better just from that standpoint alone. I think you're going to see improvements with this offense, whether it's Craver, Concepcion, Terry Bussey, Niblack, like you said. I am super, super high on Mario Craver coming into this season. I think he can absolutely take the top off the defense. But when I look at the FPI rankings in conjunction with A&M, a lot of the trends that you see up at the top of these FPI ratings are that if their quarterback is just above average, they have a monumental chance to make not only the playoff, but go to the national championship. And I think that's what I'm looking at. Texas, Georgia, you have guys who are coming in as the full-time starter in Gunnar Stockton and Arch Manning. Even at Alabama with Ty Simpson, who's been there a couple years, he could have left at any point, but he chose to stick it out when Saban retired and stay with Kalen DeBoer and say, no, I'm betting on myself. I believe I can be the starter and leader of this program. It hasn't been fully announced that Ty Simpson is going to be that starter,
Yeah.
but I'm fairly certain it's going to be Ty Simpson.
Another guy that was ranked above Marcel Reed, who isn't an announced starter yet. So there.
Exactly. But you see even all these guys who are first-time starters or full-time starters, I should say, in these programs, the talent accumulation around them is what makes their FPI ranking rating so high, is because if these quarterbacks are just above average, they are able to make these runs into the playoff race, where I think that's more accurate to what A&M is looking at this next season in trying to be a first-time playoff contender, if not trying to make a run at that national championship. They give percentages from these FPI rankings to have a 6+ win percentage, and A&M's up at a 92.5% on it. So I would wholeheartedly agree with that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's why, like, I totally get it. I get the anticipation. I get the apathy connected to them because battered Aggie syndrome, or is it Aggie battered syndrome? I always
To be
forget.
fair, you can take it either way. I've
Yeah.
always said it, battered
And
Aggie
look,
syndrome.
my dad is an '82 grad. We were talking about it the other day, and I said, was that really a thing back then? He's like, no, we just went to games and had fun, and it wasn't really like we didn't have the misery. And I was like, well, you graduated in '82, and then in the '90s, A&M football was always pretty elite, and so it wasn't until the early 2000s where things really got off, and then I get it, just the ebbs and flows of this program, but really, it's just incredible to me that after one season where guys like Carter Carroll's the 24/7 Sports, he and I were kind of on the same page last offseason. I remember I was discussing with him that, we kind of thought that this was an 8-win team last season. We thought that things were going to happen. We didn't know that they were going to start 7-1. I think we changed our expectations after they beat LSU. We kind of thought, okay, they have a formula now that's working. Next week, Le'Veon Moss goes down, and then really the season goes down with him because the chemistry that they had, the momentum they had in the running game that was really setting up success for Marcel Reed, that was gone. And we're going to get to a player right now, actually, that we have not talked a lot about, is how Reuben Owens, their former 5-star running back, how they're going to use.
I was hoping we were going.
How they're going to use him, right? Because we keep talking about this offense and Le'Veon Moss. He's always the star in discussions with this offense because he's Mike Elko's already gone around talking about how he's 100%. He's ready to come back. But I get a lot of questions from other fan bases and podcasts and all this kind of stuff. How are they going to use Reuben Owens in that offense? Because we know that what we saw last year was that Le'Veon Moss emerged as the dominant runner, as the starter, and then they threw in Amari Daniels. Like, the best game to go off of was against Missouri, I think, potentially. I think that there was not really that 1-2 punch that they got a lot out of. Mari Daniels brought a little more burst, and then Le'Veon Moss was a little more powerful, and he had equal burst. And when he got upfield, it was really hard to tackle him. That's why he kind of solidified himself. But now that we believe that Owens is going to be number 2 and that Daniels will be used a little less, but still they'll work him in there just to rest those 2 guys. What is the offense going to look like when he's in the game?
So a lot of the times, and again, I love this discussion around Rueben Owens. I have followed Rueben Owens for a long, long time, especially coming out of El Campo, where I thought he was the best receiving back in that class. I think that his utilization in a passing game where he's able to stand beside the QB and kind of take a look, okay, where's a linebacker that could be matched up on me man-to-man? Where's a nickel corner that I could probably try and take advantage of and give him a little shake and go across the middle? Where are these small things to where I can get involved? And I really, really wanted to see it going into this past year. And obviously we saw the news that he was injured, and it absolutely broke my heart to see, because I believe that in a passing offense or a run RPO offense like A&M likes to run, especially now that Le'Veon Moss is coming back fully healthy and Marcel Reed, you have that confidence in as a runner and passer coming up as a full-time starter. I think that when you give Rueben Owens opportunity, he is absolutely hungry to take advantage of those opportunities. And I think that getting the full rehab during the season and off season now, where he can go through this, it is a testament to say, hey, if people are projecting him or saying that he's going to be the second running back in this offense, you have, as an A&M fan, you are ecstatic to see that.
Yeah, no, it's kind of insane that we have not seen really what he can do. I mean, going back to his first season, he was a freshman. They kind of worked him in when they could. It was during non-conference games, so we saw a little bit of that ability, but he wasn't used, I think, as a receiver as much as they should have, and that's just, I don't know why that is. That has to do with scheme or something else. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you turn on the high school tape. This was basically a guy who can do everything in both the running game and the passing game. I mean, if he wanted to be a full-time wide receiver, he probably could be, to be honest with you. I didn't really see any weaknesses in that area. And I think that if you go back to Colin Klein's days with K-State and his scheme, they did rely on that a lot. And I wouldn't say that Le'Veon Moss is that great of a pass of a receiving running back. He can do some. We saw a little bit of that, actually, sadly, before he got hurt against South Carolina, which, yeah, he actually did a catch-up ball, and then, yeah. But if you have that 1-2 punch, it's a legit 1-2 punch, that automatically makes Marcel Reed's job easier, because he has another guy who he can dump the ball off to, not only in screens, but like you said, in the intermediate game, where if they're keen in on Casey Concepcion and they're playing a cover 2 or kind of a disguised defense that's not going to allow your guys to roam free, you put Owens in that situation, and he can outsize, outstrength, out whatever a linebacker or a cornerback, where he's just going to use his athleticism and his vision to make a cut, get the ball, and get some rack up field. And again, you have that in this offense. I know A&M fans, some of them are not a big fan of Colin Klein because they're just looking at the struggles, even though A&M was one of the best offenses statistically in the SEC last season. They just don't like the way it goes. I mean, I think they look at Texas's offense with Sarkisian. They see how, there's explosive plays in the passing game, and, the running is a lot of success in the running game. And they think, well, why can't we have that? You play football to the strengths you have on your roster. And obviously Mike Elko, who's not afraid to make changes to his coaching staff, as we saw with Jay Bateman not stepping down, but, taking a demotion of sorts, as Elko's going to call it defensive plays next season, and hiring Lyle Hemphill. He's not afraid. He obviously believes that Colin Klein is the guy to get this done. So it's not it's not about his scheme per se. It's more about putting it together, learning it this offseason. And I do believe that Ruben Owens is going to be kind of the X factor here, because I think if you can, really solidify their roles. We know what Le'Veon Moss is going to bring. We already know what Amari Daniels and EJ Smith bring. These are going to be reliable backups who, if something happens, they can come in and give you good snaps. But you figure out those roles, you start to disguise some things, like he said, against UTSA and Utah State to open the season. You score a lot of points both in the running game and the passing game. You get Marcel Reed comfortable. We enter week 3 on the road against Notre Dame in more critical games of Mike Elko's career. Is that if you can pull off that upset and you can really get that offense moving at a nice pace, and you get Marcel Reed thinking, you know what, this thing's working. We are as good as we think we are. That I get the schedule is tough, and I understand there's a lot of tough road games ahead in SEC next season. But if you can get this thing to where it was post LSU last season, before Le'Veon Moss's injury, again, they were playing confident. They had momentum. You've got more talent now than you did at that time last year, and depth. You can figure things out. Why can't A&M win 9 games next season? And again, going back to the FPI, that is why they were rated 8th out of every team in college football, and especially among the Power Four. So it's not shocking, but I love that we agree on that, because I don't think Ruben Owens is being discussed enough, because I think a lot of people, they haven't forgotten about him. They just don't know exactly how he's going to be used, because we saw Le'Veon Moss take over last season. I think it was against Arkansas, where he really, made his name heard around the country nationally, that I'm one of the best backs in the country. But again, Ruben Owens was on the sidelines. So that's all we knew. Now he's here, and I think he is really, really eager to prove that he can be one of the better running backs, not just in the SEC, but in the country. Because I remember when he committed A&M over Texas, and how sad Texas media and fans were, because they knew what he could do. It's been slow. Injuries suck for all these guys. But it's a big year for him. I can say this 100 times over. It is a huge year for his future, because if it doesn't pan out, he could be a guy entering the transfer portal next year to look for a new home, to be the number 1 guy. So I think they need to figure things out, give him his role, and it's going to be very interesting going forward. That's really all I can say right now.
Of course, I think a lot of A&M fans just want to see a lot more balance when it comes to it, and of course, some people just don't get the full picture, especially because they're not around the players all the time. But I think you're right. It is a big, big year coming up for the entire running back room. I'm going to generalize it there, because you have these guys who are wanting to bounce back because they didn't get the full measure of what they wanted to do. Le'Veon Moss, you have, I think our running back room was banged up, and now you have all of these guys coming back, where I think you can be pretty confident in whoever you put back there now, depending on what plays you run or anything along those lines. But if you need to move the ball down the field fast, especially you're going to run a lot of passing schemes, having Ruben Owens back there as a pass catcher to kind of try and reset the chains and the downs to get a couple of yards, I think is going to be very, very trying to find the right word to accurately describe it, but
impactful.
He's going to be impactful.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that word, I think people use it, they overuse it. And we saw, sorry to cut you off, but we saw a little bit of this opening the playbook up against USC. I get they lost, whatever. If you look back at that tape, and I saw one of the A&M media accounts just kind of looking back and watching it, a lot of wide receiver screens, tight end screens. Owens was getting a lot of work in the backfield, which was actually very good that he did come back at the latter half of the season, get some football playing in him, taking some hits was big, because I do believe he missed the entire season and then entered next season and practices for the first time. It would be a very slow start. So that was valuable. But we saw this offense moving the ball at a fast rate, and we saw what it could be. And that's, if you're an A&M fan and you want to go back and look at the good parts of Colin Klein's offense, watch that USC game. You can stop at the end and not watch USC stomp down the field and beat A&M. You can just stop at the point of, I think it's like the third quarter. But Marcel Reed was confident. He was passing well. He was accurate. Again, he had less quality receiving options that game, and still he was hitting his targets. You put guys like Isaiah Williams and Bethel Roman and Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion in that situation, A&M ain't losing that game, right? Because they're making big plays to the passing game, and that running back rotation is gashing defenses. So
Absolutely.
when it's working, it's going to look good. There are going to be games where defenses figure it out and they're looking a little weaker, and that's when you get into the discussion of Marcel Reed has to step up as passer. He's just got it, right? But if it's working, if the running game is going and Reed is hitting his targets, this is going to be one of the better offenses in the SEC. I will say that. I'm not just saying that. I will say that because I've seen what it could be, and I do know that Colin Klein is a good play caller. He just needs a lot, and he needs things working. He's just not – I wouldn't say that he's great at, changing things on the fly. I just haven't seen that yet. So that's one of his weaknesses. I mean, look, I get people just want us to trash talk some of these coaches, but it's not going to happen. It's not hard to feel positive when you have all these guys at full strength. And you are right that this is a huge year, obviously, for Le'Veon Moss as well, because he wants to be selected high in the NFL draft. And look, I don't think it would have happened last year because of the injury. I think a team would have taken maybe a really late waiver on him, and that would have been bad for his career. So if he can stay healthy throughout the season, possibly lead the SEC in rushing yards, it is possible. He's kind of shown it, especially with that offensive line. Look, he's going to be having a nice payday, probably as a second or third round pick by this time next April.
Let's lock in an honesty guarantee right here.
Personally, you can disagree, but I think that, and I think he ended the season with, it was like 700 and
in the higher 700s.
Higher 700s, which again, he would have passed the century mark, and we would be talking about Le'Veon Moss being selected most likely third or fourth round, just because of what he has been able to do in the SEC. But personally, I think with the addition of Owens, I'm thinking 8 to 9.
You think 8 to 9?
I think that's going to be more split. I think that he will take control in certain games. I think that's kind of how it's going to work, is that in the first two games, UTSA and Utah State, those are big to kind of figure out your room. I think that they're going to give Moss a little bit of rest if he gets like 50, 60, 70 yards or something in a tutty, and then bring in Owens and Daniels to kind of finish things out. But I think in games on the road against Notre Dame, obviously when they hit the SEC, I think he's going to be the main guy. And I think that's when they're going to start utilizing Owens more in the passing game to just give Marcel Reed another option. So I think he's still going to lead back. He could pass century mark. Like he could end up just being that number one option that's just working. And Elko and Klein kind of see, look, we're just going to give him majority of the snaps and use everybody else strategically. Yes. But I think this is going to be more run by committee because of those guys they have. But I think that really just depends on Ruben Owens' development. I think that we just haven't seen him reach that ceiling because, again, go back. Again, if you're not a fan, go back, try to find his high school film. This is what he can do. He's one of the best athletes coming out. If he can reach that level or something close to it, A&M is not going to sit him on the bench. They know that we got to utilize the talent we have around us. So, and he's
it's really hard to bench someone who's making that much of a difference.
Yes.
When it is contributing to the points per game on that offense, you better believe that those people who are contributing the most are going to be on that field. There is no question about it. So if it's contributing to points per game, we'll take it. That's for sure. And I know the offensive coaching staff will take it because it puts a lot of less pressure on that defense for sure.